Hello everyone. In this session, we will continue the discussion of some of the locational theory, and one of the locational theory that we will take up is the very important theory, that is industrial location theory. Industrial location theory was given by Alfred Weber in 1909, when he has written a very famous book, that is The Location of Industries. Primarily, it's simply one of the locational theory, but its importance is huge in case of your UPSC perspective. So, obviously, it is one of the three important locational theory that we have in geography optional, that is your agricultural location theory of Thünen, Christoffels location theory of central place, and the industrial location theory of Weber. But Weber becomes very important, Weber's theory becomes very important because almost each and every year you will find the direct question from the Weber. Either you will find in paper 1 or you will find in paper 2 with your industry related question, or even some of the year if they are not giving the question directly in your paper 1, paper 2 optional, so they will ask the question in your GS paper. So, that is why this Weber theory is important as it is. Other than this, most of the questions related to the theory, most of the questions related to the industry will always have some bearing of the Alfred Weber. So, that is why it is very important to understand, and not only just understand, have some orientation, some ideas that how this in what dimensions I can use the idea of the Weber, what could be some of the contemporary relevance of this Weber's idea. So, that you will learn over the period of time. So, my purpose is not just telling you the Alfred Weber's theory, but also to give you some new insight that how you should use that in your examination in the form of case study, in the form of examples, which will definitely fetch you good marks. As far as theory is concerned, theory is simply like one of the all the locational theory. This is also one of the locational theory, and this theory is in the backdrop of industrialization. So, when industrialization was happening in the Germany, he has written a very extensively in the 1909. So, obviously, by 1909 industrialization was in full swing, and industrialization was mostly in the form of replacing the earlier agricultural activity by the manufacturing activity. So, he is also a German. So, he has extensively looked out the most of the prevalent condition that where the industries are being set up. So, when he has analyzed what he found, that most of the manufacturing centers are being set up, most of the manufacturing industries are being set up nearby the raw material. Like you will have very famous region of the Germany, that is Ruhr. So, in most of the iron smelting centers, iron steel industries has been set up in the Ruhr region. Similarly, while Weber was writing, so in that time period, obviously it was not the time of von Thünen. Like von Thünen's idea was that there will be only one form of the transportation, that is horse cart. But in case of Weber, the railway networks were very much available. So, what he found that some of the industry, like you will have the cotton textile industry was not being set up nearby the raw materials, rather it is more near to the market. And with the advent of rail, most of the materials can be taken to the far off places of production to the market. So, based on all these, he has tried to suggest that where industry needs to be set up. And obviously, when he was suggesting the location of the industry, the only thing that was in his mind is that industry should be profitable. So, he was suggesting the location of profitable industry. Almost like other locational theory, the Alfred Weber's locational theory also have certain assumptions. So, he is also starting from the same line, like there should be isotropic surface. Isotropic surface means there should be a uniform surface. Also, he suggested that there will be almost a single market, in which the materials will be sold and almost you can say purchased. So, most of there was a similarity in the assumptions. He is assuming that the labor cost is same initially. So, labor cost will be same, the efficiency of the labor is also same, skilling was also there. So, almost everything was uniform. The only thing that was variable in writings of the Weber is he considered that raw material will vary. He considered that some of the raw material happens to be ubiquitous. Ubiquitous means this it is present everywhere. So, industry will not be based on this, like you will have the air, water, sunlight. So, industry will not be located based on the ubiquitous raw materials, rather industry will be based on the localized raw material. So, he is considered that there are some of the raw materials that are localized. So, they are present in only specified area. The localized raw materials he further subdivided in different categories, like some of the raw material he considered as weight gaining raw material, some of the raw material he considered that these are the weight losing raw material, some of the raw material he considered these are the foot loose raw material. And in fact, based on these raw materials, the industry that will be set up obviously will be referred as weight gaining industry, weight losing industry, foot loose industry. How he referred this weight gaining, weight losing? In fact, he has devised a material index. So, index he has prepared, and this index was based on what? He has referred this material index as M. So, material index is simply weight of localized raw material, by total weight of produced. So, let us suppose that you are producing 1 kg of steel. So, if 1 kg of steel requires 5 kg of coal, so the M will be obviously more than 1. So, he considered that the M could be more than 1, or if you are producing 1 kg of cotton textile and you require 1 kg of raw cotton, so obviously M is equals to 1, or might be you are producing some of the, let us say, beer. So, for production of 1 kg of beer, you require some of the grapes and some other requirement only of 500 grams. So, obviously, M is less than 1. So, depending upon simply that the weight of localized raw material. In simple word, you can say if you require more localized raw material, obviously it is your material index will be more than 1 and it is your weight losing industry. If you require less amount of localized material, more amount of your final produce, so that is your weight gaining, क्योंकि बाद में आप weight add कर रहा, and this additional weight that was adding in the minds of Weber, it was mostly associated with the ubiquitous material like water. And if you are requiring the same kind of same amount of raw material and you are producing the same amount of final goods, that will be your 1. So, based on that, this is your weight losing. This will be your foot loose and this is your weight gaining. Now, simply he suggested that there will be a variation of the raw material. Now, if the raw material is varying, he simply considered that everything will be same, the rate of transportation will be same, but if material is at different places, if material is not present at one places, material are differently distributed, obviously there will be some of the variation in the transportation cost, because he simply consider that the transportation cost is varying in terms of weight and distance. If you want to carry more material, obviously it will depend upon the how far you need to carry. So according to the Weber, the only thing that is variable is the amount of raw material and the distance. So based on that, he has come out with the first locational concept, and it is referred as transport cost, because he was looking out that the only thing through which you can earn more profit is having the lowest transportation cost, because all the other things is more or less same. So that is why it is also referred as least transportation cost model. Whenever you will write about the Weber, always remember generally what students used to write, or what they used to, what mistake they used to commit. You need to have a clarity that obviously the most of the writing of the Weber was associated with the transportation cost. So he has given overemphasis on the transportation cost, but later on he also have modified his model and he has given emphasis on the labor cost. So labor cost also has been almost considered by the Weber. Lately he has given the consideration for the agglomeration effect. So whenever the Alfred Weber's model has been asked, whenever the industrial location theory has been asked, do not just try to write about the simply transportation cost. Try to write about how he has modified his model and given some importance to the labor, how he has considered the agglomeration effect also. So first of all, we will stick to the initial part. So initially he has simply considered that the industry will be located on the basis of transportation cost. To present the location, to almost you can say to tell that where industry will be located, he has come out with the material index, and based on the material index he has prepared the triangle. Now how he has prepared the triangle are simply, just try to understand. This triangle, through the triangle he has shown the location of the industry when there is a more than one goods. So obvious when there is a requirement of more than one raw materials, because most of the industry, he considered that some of the industry will be based on only single goods, single raw material. So in case of single raw material, there is no problem. You will have a raw material, you will have a market. So for the single raw material based industry, the industry will be based on the weight of raw material that you are using. So if it is a weight losing raw material, so the industry will have more tendency to settle nearby the raw material. Means if the material index is greater than 1, so industry will be located more near to the raw materials. Like you will have very famous sugar industry. Most of the sugar industry, because it requires huge amount of sugar cane, it's a requirement of huge amount of sugar cane. Because of that, the sugar industry will be located nearby the raw material, nearby the sugar producing area, sugar cane producing area. So in India, if you will look out the where sugar industries are located, you will find most of the sugar industries are located in the vicinity where the sugar cane is being produced. Or initially, if you will look out the iron and steel industry, because the iron and steel industry was mostly based on the coal. So initially the requirement of coal was very huge. That is why we have the Bhilai steel plant, we have the Tata steel plant, Tisco, all these Durgapur steel plant, all these steel plants you will find they are located nearby in the area where we will have the coal is being produced. So most of the smelting centers, most of the sugar industries will find nearby the raw materials. Some of the industries which are primarily the weight gaining industries, so weight gaining industries where requirement of raw material is less, weight of the raw material is going to be less, needs to be set up nearby the market. Like we will have a classical example of the brewery industry, distillation process. So brewery industry, distillation process will be done nearby the market, As far as some of the footloose industry where the amount of particularly the amount of the requirement of raw materials is going to be the same as the requirement, the final goods. So, that industry can be set up in between. So, if you will have the footloose, that is M equals to 1, so the industry can be set up in between. So, when there is a single market, when there is a single raw material for the industry, if industry is based on the single raw material, there is not much problem, but the problem will start occurring if the industry is not based on the single raw material and its requirement is more than one raw material. So, when the industry requires more than one raw material, for that he has prepared a triangle, and this triangle is based on the market and raw material 1, raw material 2. So, if material index is less than 1, that is the weight gaining, so weight gaining there is no issue, the industry will be located nearby the market. So, some of the industries, obviously the brewery industry, but in modern time you will look out that most of the electronic industry, most of the automobile industry falls in the category of weight gaining. Now, there can be some doubt in your mind that how come these industries are weight gaining, but just try to understand. If you will look out the automobile industry, which is the most important component in the automobile industry, the most important component in automobile industry happens to be the engine. And if you will compare the weight of the engine with the total weight of the vehicle, you will find it's a very small. So, you can assemble your car, you can assemble your truck nearby Gurgaon, and might be you are importing the engine from Japan, from USA. Similarly, if you will look out the electronic industry, the smartphones, in a smartphone the most important component is your motherboard. In your computer the most important component is your CPU, and if you will compare the weight of the CPU, the weight of the motherboard with the mobile or your laptop, you will find that is very small. So, ultimately we are going to do what? Assembling. And in assembling, the most important thing, the most important or crucial part, if its weight is considerably low, so it is well qualified to be called as weight gaining industry. That is why in the modern time, most of the weight gaining industry, if you will think that where the Sony is going to set up their center, where the Apple needs to set up their plant, manufacturing plant. So, obviously, they are not going to set up in some of the village area, they will identify the Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, these are the location, because this is very near to the market. Coming to the problem will start occurring when you will have the weight losing raw material. In case of weight losing raw material, obviously the industry need to be set up nearby the market, but which nearby the raw material, but which raw material, because your requirement is more than one raw material. So, in that case, first of all it needs to be identified that which raw material is required in higher proportion. So, if you will have multiple raw material and if the industries happens to be weight losing, so the weight losing industry obviously needs to be set up nearby the raw material. But in the raw materials, which raw materials requirement is more, industry will be located based on that. So, if let us say you will have the coal, you will have iron ore. So, if the requirement of coal is let us say 8:1. So, in iron and steel industry, if coal is needed 8 quantity and iron is needed 1 quantity, obviously the industry will be more tendency to set up nearby the coal producing area. Like in our country also, the iron and steel industry have witnessed a phase wise evolution. So, initially when the industry was based on the coal, initially the technique was the prevalent technique to produce the iron and steel was based on the coal dominance. So, we require 8 quantity of coal and 1 quantity of iron ore. So, most of the iron and steel industry will be set up nearby the coal producing area, be it your West Bengal, be it your Odisha, all the iron and steel industry will be located nearby. But later on, so in that case, the industry will have tendency to agglomerate, industry will have tendency to shift toward that higher quantity of raw material. Later on, when we have almost, you can say, refined our technique of iron and steel production, and we have started using more and more energy which is being produced from other sources like electricity, hydroelectricity. So, in that case iron ore was needed 2 quantity, coal was needed only 1 quantity. So, if the requirement of coal is less, more iron ore, so we can set up the industry nearby the iron producing area. Like very famous Visvesvaraya steel plant, Salem steel plant, Bhadravati steel plant. So, these are the steel plants that are iron ore based, because the coal requirement has reduced, and if the coal requirement has reduced, obviously we can match up the requirement of coal through the import also. So, simply you need to understand that if you will have more than one raw material, and if the industry is a weight losing industry, obviously it is very clear that the industry will be set up nearby the raw material, but which raw material needs to be nearby which raw material industry needs to be settled. So, you need to just remember that the raw material that is going to be needed more in quantity, the industry needs to be settled. That is the classical Weberian model. So, if the industry, if the iron steel industry is being set up nearby the particularly in Tisco, in Bhilai, so that is your classical Weberian model. It is based on the classical concept of the Weber. So, this is how he suggested that industry needs to be settled, that is based on the simply transportation cost. So, based on the transportation cost, if it is a weight gaining industry, it needs to be set up nearby the market. If it is a weight losing industry, so it needs to be set up nearby raw materials, and if it is a foot loose industry, so it should be set up nearby the in between, that is market and raw material. So, whenever you will get the questions in your paper 2 related to India, let us say you are being asked about the pharmaceutical industry, or you will be asked about the fertilizer industry or cement industry, whatever the industry the question is being asked. First of all, you need to identify because to answer those questions you need to know the raw material. So, requirement of raw material needs to be clear to you, because if you will not have the clarity that what raw material is needed in the cement industry, so it will be difficult for you to answer. तो सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री के लिए आपको रॉ मटेरियल भी जानना होगा और उसके साथ में आपको 3-4 सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री भी पता होनी चाहिए कहाँ पे हमारी सीमेंट इंडस्ट्री है. आयरन एंड स्टील इंडस्ट्री के बारे में लिखने के लिए फॉर यू नीड टू नो दैट व्हाट आर द मेन इंग्रेडिएंट फॉर द आयरन एंड स्टील इंडस्ट्री. क्या क्या चाहिए आयरन एंड स्टील इंडस्ट्री के लिए. अब अगर आपको पता है यस कोल इज नीडेड, आयरन ओर इज नीडेड, द मैग्नीज इज नीडेड, कॉपर इज नीडेड, water is needed. So, and also you need to know some of the 3-4 industry. Then only you will be able to know that you will able to know or you will able to apply the mind that why this industry is located only here, why the industry is not located in Delhi, why the industry is not located in let us say Lucknow, why the industry is not located in Chandigarh. Then only you will have almost you will be in a position to write in that manner. So, simply you just need to know the industry, raw material and where the industry is located. So, if you will be knowing that, almost you can think, you can just apply the Weber. In most of the cases of industry, you will be able to write. So, even in paper 2 also you can recall, you are not supposed to write each and everything of the Weber in case of paper 2. If the question is being asked that why most of the pharmaceutical industries are located in the western part of India, in the western coastal part of India, so no need to write whole of the concept of the Weber. You can just give the reference, you can just give the reference. So, simply the industry will be located based on this. There is there is one or you can say 2-3 important modification for that, you just need to remember. First of all, in general Weber have suggested that the foot loose industry can be set up in between. So, market and raw material. But over the period of time what has been seen, to get the maximum benefit of the proximity, most of these foot loose industries are having the tendency to shift toward the market. So, in general they can be set up in between. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि वो बीच में नहीं सेटअप की जा सकती या वो प्रॉफिटेबल नहीं है. But over the period of time it has been seen that some of the foot loose industries are shifting towards the market area. So, in general you need to remember that questions will be asked either directly the Weber will be asked. So it can be asked like discuss the concept of Weber. So concept of Weber. Then it can be asked that whether the Weber is relevant in the contemporary time period. So relevance of Weber. Then simply it can be asked that why any industry, is located where it is located. Again the Weber, you need to find the answer from the Weber's idea only, and then the most important, changes, shift. So you need to remember this, that why the shift is happening. So both the things you need to know, and to answer this shift you need to know that this, because if you are not aware that kahan isko hona chahiye tha, you will not be able to answer properly. So let's say question is being asked that in last few years it has been seen that the most of the new sugar mills are being opened in the peninsula. So in one way or other examiner is giving you hint कि लास्ट कुछ सालों में ज्यादा से ज्यादा शुगर मिल्स कहां पे ओपन हो रही, पेनिनसुला में, तो इसका मतलब पहले कहां ओपन हो रही थी. सो यू नीड टू नो द लोकेशन, द व्हाई द इंडस्ट्री वाज लोकेटेड वेयर इट वाज लोकेटेड, एंड देन द शिफ्ट. सो हियर relevance of Weber and particularly Weber's theory, and then it changes shift. Now in this shift there are 2-3 things. First of all, the changes will be based on the technological shift. So like I have given the example of iron and steel industry. तो जैसे ही अगर हमारी changes हो जाएंगे, so let's suppose earlier we were require more quantity of coal, so the industry was located nearby the coal producing area. Then we have refined some of our requirement and we require more quantity of iron ore, so industry have shifted to the iron ore producing area. After that, over the period of time, we have started almost utilizing the imported coal. When we realized that most of our coal is imported, so we thought that why not to just take it the iron ore to the imported area and set up the industry there. So we have started settling the industry nearby the coastal area like Visakhapatnam. Over the period of time, we came across that most of the city area, most of the people's requirement of the steel have changed. Now they require stainless steel, SS steel, and the SS steel is mostly based on the raw material. The raw material that is being used to produce the SS steel happens to be the your scrapped steel. So if we needed scrapped steel, so why to set up the industry nearby the coal producing area or iron producing area? Why not to set up the industry nearby the city itself? And why to set up the large scale industry? Why not to set up the small industry? So we have evolution of the new concept, that is mini steel plant. So many steel plants are being set up nearby the Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Pune. So there will be some shift, and this shift is primarily based on the technological advancement. So you need to appreciate that shift. You need to appreciate that shift. Like earlier, cotton textile. So cotton textile can be set up in between, but over the period of time, when we have started developing when we have started using synthesized cotton. So synthesized cotton means the raw cotton we are mixing, and because of that, now the thread, there is no problem of breaking the thread, because earlier the pure cotton thread was having problem of breaking. So if you are not having the moist climate, so the thread will become very dry and it will break, and if the thread will break, obviously it will hamper the production. But once we have started having the synthetical thread, we have started mixing, and now we have the synthetic thread, that there is no problem of breaking. So either you can set up the industry in Sonipat or you can set up the industry in Raurkela, there doesn't matter. So there is no need to locate the cotton textile only in the Kolkata, only in the Karachi or only in the Mumbai? And that is why the cotton textile have been set up throughout the country. Similarly, if you will look out the petroleum, so crude oil refining happens to be the footloose category. So crude oil is something, let us say you are taking 100 kg of crude oil. So from the 100 kg of crude oil you can prepare the best quality as a petrol, then inferior quality as a diesel, and the lowest inferior or the most inferior quality as a kerosene. So all the 100 kg of crude oil can be processed to get the output. So it falls in the category of footloose. So earlier it was being set up in between, but later on when we have started looking out that the demand in market is increasing more and more, so we have started shifting toward the market. So most of the present refining centers are being set up nearby the market as compared to the from the crude oil producing areas. So in case of industries, always you need to look out two things, that is why the industry is located and also the some of the shifts. Shift was not only associated with the technological advancement, shift is also based on some of the classical things. So what is this classical thing? It was being suggested by the Weber itself. So the first concept that the Weber has given was the transport, but later on he appreciated that yes, there can be some new places which outweighed this transportation cost. So later on he considered the role of labor cost. He has considered the almost concept of isodepane. Isodepane is simply the surface area. So isodepanes are simply the locations, and these locations are based on some of the cost contours. Cost contours means on that particular line there will be same cost of, it can be of transportation cost or it can be a labor cost. So as far as isodepane is considered, it is associated with the both transportation cost as well as labor cost. But Weber have primarily used it for the labor cost. So try to understand like this. Let us say initially it has been identified that industry will be located at this place, right. So industry will be located at this place, and the transportation cost for this is, let us say, labor cost is 600 rupees, transportation cost is let us say 300 rupees or 400 rupees. So transportation cost is 400 rupees, labor cost is 600. So the total cost is 1000 rupees. Now, Weber identified this isodepane. Now let us say this is isodepane in terms of cost contour, that is your labor, your transportation cost as well as labor cost. Now, here what is happening, the transportation cost is increasing 20 rupees each. So here you will have 420, here you will have 440, here you will have 460, here you will have 480, here you will have 500. Now this is the area where you will have the transportation cost is increased 100 rupees. But let us say in this, at this particular location, might be the labor cost has come down to 400 rupees. So the labor cost is 200 rupees lesser than the labor cost which is prevalent at this location, but the transportation cost has increased 100 rupees. Now just try to understand, transportation cost increased, extra transportation cost is your 100 rupees, and savings that you are going to have on the labor cost is 200 rupees. So ultimately you will find transportation cost, that is you are going to incur extra, is 100 and saving is 200. So ultimately it is going to give you a profit of 100 rupees. So this whole zone where this isodepane is prevalent has been referred as critical isodepane. Critical isodepane is simply the area where excess transportation cost can be outweighed by the savings on the labor cost. So simply it's a quite obvious that if you will take your industry here, obviously you can save more, because cost of production at here it will come down to 900, here it's 1000. So Weber considered that yes, there will exist some of the locations where the transportation cost will obviously incur extra, ज़्यादा लगेगा, लेकिन because of availability of labor, because of the prevalent condition, skilling and all the other condition, might be socio-economic condition, what will happen? The labor cost will be cheaper. And if the labor cost is cheaper, so obviously you will earn more profit and the industry can be located. So this is referred as the classical case of Weber, that industry is shifting just because of the savings on the labor cost. So industry will shift in the areas where you will have cheap and efficient labor is available. Now you will have agglomeration effect. In the end, he also have considered the agglomeration effect, and this agglomeration effect is what? Agglomeration effect is simply more and more industry will be set up in the area where already you will have the industry. In very simple word, just try to understand, if you want to set up an IT industry, आपको एक IT industry setup करना है इस present condition में, so if you will try to set up that IT industry in Patna, you will face lot of problems. If you will try to set up the IT industry in Jammu and Kashmir, you will face lot of issues. It is not that the industry should not be located, but in general, if you will set up the industry in Pune, in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, it will be more profitable. Similarly, if you will set up the, let's say you want to set up a diamond cutting center, diamond factory. So diamond factory, it will always be profitable to be set up in the Surat, where you will have already lots of factories are there. So in general, and not only that, related to that particular genre, even let's say you want to set up a automobile industry. So if you want to set up automobile industry, obviously your choice will be first Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore, because already automobile industry, you will require some of the labor, you will require all the other things, but ultimately the automobile industry, the cars that will be manufactured needs to be sold in the market. So who will purchase? Where you will have the more and more wealthy people. So the agglomeration effect is simply the effect of in which the industry will have tendency to be set up in the area where already some form of the industrialization is there. So where already some form of the industrialization is there, industry will be shifted, will be set up in that area. So that is your agglomeration effect. So primarily the Weber have given his model in three different aspects, that is your transportation cost, labor cost and the agglomeration. Most interesting is the concept of labor cost. So I think we have learned in general the industry. Now we will try to analyze the effect of Weber or in general the location of manufacturing centers. Obviously, most of the industrialization that has happened, initially it was in Europe and later on USA. So over the period of time, obviously the North America have been the most important manufacturing center. So in starting from the 1950s almost, you can say, the global giant is your USA without any doubt. Over the period of time, what has been witnessed that when the USA more and more manufacturing centers have been set up, so the cost of production have been very high. So because the cost of production became very high, obviously the prices of that product will be also very high, and if the prices of that product will be high, so you cannot make it available to masses. So for that you require that cost of production should go down. So how the cost of production will go down? Also in the different part of the world, there were some countries that were trying to attract some of the investor that come in our country and we will set up some centers and we will give some of the tax rebate and all those. So different countries have tried to give some rebates, like we will have the reduction in the import duty, export duty, but most of the countries were not successful in attracting the investors or attracting the industrialists. One very important thing that you need to know, nearby the border of USA and Mexico, because Mexico is a neighboring country, on the borders of Mexico, Mexico have started almost attracting the industries of USA. They have tried to give that if you can set up the industry, if you will set up the industry, you will get lots of tax rebate and all. But industry have not been set up in whole Mexico. Rather, most of the industries have been set up nearby the Mexico, that is northern Mexico border, and those areas, those regions of the industry is simply referred as maquiladoras. Maquiladoras, you can say, like more or less similar to how we have SEZ. So, like special economic zones we have created in our country. Similarly, the maquiladoras have been set up. Now, in the maquiladoras, what was the case? Almost in USA, you will find the labor cost in 2010, it was around $20 per hour, and in that maquiladoras, it came to $3 per hour. This is the rate of 2010. Almost imagine that when this concept of maquiladoras have been almost started, 1966, first maquiladoras has been set up, that is Tijuana state. So, in that time period, there was a rampant poverty in case of Mexico. So, to just uplift that, what they have tried that come set up the industry in our country, you will get lots of benefit. But why those industries were more attracted to these maquiladoras? Almost presently you will have the millions of people are working in the maquiladoras, and roughly in 2010 there was 3,000 maquiladoras. So why they have been attracted? First of all, because it's very near to the USA, 20 kilometer away from the USA. So most of the industries, be it your electronic industry, be it your automobile industry, most of the industries of USA, they work in this model, that is JIT, just in time model. Like in our country also, most of the automobile manufacturers are working in that model in the presently also, that they will not have the inventory just manufacture. Rather, when the customer needed that, customer wants to have one vehicle, so they will take the booking and then they will start manufacturing that. So we have the just in time manufacturing concept is almost prevalent throughout the world in the present time, but in those time period it was the USA manufacturing centers, those who were almost following that. So in that backdrop, what has happened, the location was very easy, and on top of it, most of the working people that was employed in that maquiladoras happens to be the female. So when you will have the female, obviously you will not have the problem of that trade unions and all those strikes and all. So one benefit, and labor cost has reduced heavily. So almost it was 1/10. So 1/10 labor cost, and almost very near to the USA. So you will go and you will produce, you will manufacture, and you will bring that and you will sell in the market at much cheaper rate. So the cost of production have reduced, and this cost of production that has reduced, they have started passing on to the consumers. And when they have started passing on the consumers, obviously particularly the demand will increase. So this is one very important classical model of Weber, settling up of the maquiladoras. More interestingly, so this was the case. Over the period of time, some other countries have started developing as a manufacturing centers. So if you will look out the centers, after the USA, that which country has almost set up, almost have developed itself as a manufacturing giant is China. Now the question arises that how the China became successful. So in the same 2010, if you will look out the cost of hourly rate in China, it is almost 60 cent. So 1/20th cost of labor. So such a cheap labor is available in China, and China itself was very large, very huge market. Of course, in that time period, the Indian economy was not open, and obviously India was not open to the settling up of those industries, whereas China was open. So they were also having this mind that this China, this India, this Asia is such a huge market. For USA market, they were already having the maquiladoras, but for the Asiatic market, they were looking out some of the locations. So they found the China, and not only the labor cost, China has also very strong infrastructure in terms of the port network. They have developed very fine port, also from the port to the hinterland connectivity. So port hinterland connectivity was also very strong. So because of this port hinterland connectivity and the labor has also migrated from the rural area to urban area. There is a difference in the migration pattern of China with India. In India, almost from the 1970s itself, we will find that a lot of migration has happened from the rural to urban area. But in case of India, it is a male-led migration. Most of the migration is a male-led migration, and it is a push migration. But there, in case of China, most of the migration happens to be the pull migration. They have been attracted to the industry. They have been attracted that they will get more and more wage, and also that was not any gender specific. So even it was mostly female, because it was supposed that the male will work in the field and the female will go and they will work in the industry and they will live in the city area. So on the strong labor availability, and having a strong, particularly the port hinterland connectivity, the China has taken that benefit of the cheap labor cost. So even the China, how it became the manufacturing hub, is also based on the same classical Weberian model. One last point. So like China has developed, why China has grown as a manufacturing hub? Based on the labor cost. तो जो वेबर ने बताया बिल्कुल ठीक है. अब सवाल उठता है that India is trying very hard, and also we have lots of potential. So labor cost is also very cheap in our country. Even in the backdrop of COVID-19, if you will recall, so a lot of states were trying to attract the investors, and they were saying that come in UP, I will give you the space, I will give you the free land, lease free land. Then MP government was also trying, some other government was also trying, but still, other than the major service based industries, most of the industries are not being settling their manufacturing plant in India. Why? Because one thing that you need to keep in mind, that in modern time, because China, there is not much problem, or the cost of labor has not increased so drastically. So first of all, the industrialists are not so much panic. So first of all, they are not very much panicked to change their supply chain, their manufacturing. And the second thing is, yes, we have the cheap labor cost, yes, we have the efficient labor, skilled labor, but the most important problem that India is facing is supply chain and the port hinterland connectivity. So there is a problem in the supply chain and port hinterland connectivity. That is why it is considerably difficult for India to become a global manufacturing hub, until unless we are going to work more and more on improving our port hinterland connectivity, internal connectivity, and also focusing more and more on the supply chain. So robust supply chain if you will have, and will have the port hinterland connectivity, so obviously India is also having a huge potential to become the global manufacturing hub. So whether in the present time period the Weber is applicable is not, obviously he is almost, most of the cases he is applicable. So idea of the Weber is still relevant, and in most of the time you can give the example of maquiladoras, you can give the example of China, that how the China has grown is very much present. So that's it from my side about this industrial location theory of Weber. And if you will just go through with this session, I am sure that it will heavily help you out in answering the questions of the industry both in GS paper and in your optional papers. That's it from my side. Thank you.